dispatcher called me at 11:47 p.m. to ask if everything was okay back there, and I told him everything was fine, because at 11:47 p.m. I was alone in the cab on a flat, empty stretch of US 1 outside Edison, and there was no back there to ask about. He repeated the question. He said the customer was concerned about the cargo and wanted me to confirm the trailer was still secure. I said it was. I asked him what he meant by concerned. He said, they can hear you breathing through the wall and they want to know if you can hear them. Then he hung up, and I pulled onto the shoulder. And I sat there for a long time before I got out of the truck. I want to do this right, so I'm going to back up to where the night started, because the call doesn't make sense without the rest of it. My name is Mark. I'm 34. 6 months ago, I was running a forklift at a paper goods warehouse in Piscataway, and I had health insurance and a paid Friday lunch, and I lived a regular life. The warehouse closed in March. The lease on my half of the house in Bound Brook was up in 2 weeks, and my landlord had already made it clear he wasn't doing me any more favors. I have a Class A CDL from a brief and unhappy year of long haul in 2019, and I keep it current the way some people keep a passport current, because you never know. The ad was on a freight broker board a guy I knew from the warehouse sent me. One night, $400 cash. Hookup in Linden, delivered to a distribution warehouse in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, drop and release. About 4 hours each way. Owner-operator equipment, I'd be using their tractor and their trailer, just bring the license. Replied at 4:30 p.m. Got a confirmation email at 5:02 p.m. with an address, a gate code, and a name. Dispatch. Contact A, Vance, and a phone number with a 908 area code. The bill of lading came as a PDF attachment. I read the bill of lading in the parking lot of a Pilot off I-78 at 6 o'clock because I'd stopped for coffee and a sandwich, and I wanted to make sure I had the paperwork straight before I showed up. The cargo description said empty pallets, returnable. The weight listed was 41,200 pounds. Empty pallets don't weigh 41,000 pounds. A 48-foot trailer fully loaded with stacked GMA pallets, dunnaged and strapped, is maybe 10,000 pounds. I worked in a warehouse. I know what pallets weigh. 41,000 is a real load. 41,000 is what you'd see on a trailer of bottled water or canned goods or stacked drywall. I almost called Vance about it. I had the phone in my hand, the number open on the screen. I sat there with the AC going and a tuna salad sandwich in my lap, and I thought about the $400. And I thought about how brokers cut and paste from old templates all the time. And I thought about how this was probably some clerical thing where the weight had been entered for the outbound load and never updated for the deadhead return. That happens. That happens constantly. So I closed the email and I drove the rest of the way to Linden. The yard was off Tremley Point Road. If you've ever been near the Bayway refinery, you know that whole stretch. Flares burning a quarter mile up, tank farms behind chain link, container yards, a Wake Fern distribution center, a half-dozen no-name freight outfits with gravel lots, and a single mercury vapor light on a pole. The address Vance gave me was one of those. A gravel lot, maybe 2 acres, surrounded by 9-foot chain link with razor wire on top. The gate was rolled open. There was no sign with a company name on it, just a number, 1140, stenciled on the post in white paint that had run a little when whoever painted it didn't wait for the rain to stop. I drove in expecting a yard hostler or a guy in a vest with a clipboard or at least someone smoking by a doorway, because that's what every freight yard I've ever been in looks like at 7 o'clock on a weeknight. There was no one. The trailers were lined up against the back fence in 2 neat rows, maybe 20 of them, mostly anonymous white 48s, no logos. The tractor I'd be using was idling in the middle of the lot. A red Freightliner Cascadia, maybe 10 years old, mud on the fenders, marked alone hauling in faded gold script on the door. The keys were in the ignition. The driver's seat was still warm. I want to flag that. The seat was warm. Whoever had brought the tractor over from wherever it lived had been gone less than 10 minutes when I got there. But there was no one in the lot. No second vehicle. No footprints in the gravel I could distinguish from my own. I stood there with the cab door open, listening, and the only sound was the diesel and the faint hush of I-95 over the embankment to the east. Vance had texted me earlier. Trailers in Bay 9? Airlines are good. Pre-trip is on you. Pull out by 8? Bay 9 was at the far end of the back row. I climbed in the Freightliner, brought it around, lined up to the kingpin, and backed in. Hooked up, cranked the gear, slide the fifth wheel, plug the glad hands, run the 7-way for the lights. Standard. The trailer rocked a little when I dropped the suspension. That's normal. That's the springs giving. And I didn't think anything of it then. I got out to walk it. That's the part of pre-trip you don't skip even if you want to, because if a tire blows on the Pennsylvania Turnpike at 2 a.m, it's your CDL on the line, not the broker's. The trailer was a white 48-foot dry van, no logos, ABS lights working, mud flaps intact, no obvious damage to the side panels, reefer unit on the front, but it wasn't running and the cord wasn't plugged, which made sense for empty pallets. Tires looked tired but legal. I walked the curbside, checked the slider, came around the back. There was a padlock on the rear door latch. This is going to sound like a small thing. Trailers have padlocks. Lots of trailers have padlocks. Sealed loads, high-value freight, anything that needs to come off the truck with the lock still intact for chain of custody. The padlock didn't surprise me. What surprised me was that the padlock was on the inside of the latch. I want to be careful describing this because I've thought about it a lot since, and I want to get it right. Trailer doors close with a vertical bar that rotates into a keeper at the top and bottom of the door frame. The handle of the bar folds up against the door and is held in place by a small metal hasp, a flat loop of steel that lines up with another loop welded to the door itself. You put your padlock through both loops, you click it shut, the handle can't move, the bar can't rotate, the doors stay closed, the padlock sits outside the doors. You stand behind the trailer, you face the doors, and you see the lock. That's how every padlocked trailer in North America works. This padlock was through the loops, and it was clicked shut. But the body of the lock, the heavy part, the part with the keyhole, was on the inside face of the hasp, on the trailer side, not the air side. To put it there, you would have had to thread the shackle through both loops from the inside out, which means you would have had to be standing inside the trailer when you closed it. The keyhole was facing in. Whoever locked this trailer had locked themselves in. I stood there for a second with my hand on my flashlight, and I tried to make it make sense. I thought maybe somebody had hung the lock the wrong way for a joke. I thought maybe this was a kind of lock I didn't know about, some specialty thing where the orientation didn't matter. I tried the body of the lock, solid, heavy, real. American-made, the kind of brass-bodied padlock you see at hardware stores. The shackle was through both loops and snug. Whoever set it had set it deliberately. I looked up at the doors. They were unmarked. Standard swing-out, slight grime around the seams. No rust around the hinges. I pressed my ear against the right-hand door because I'm an idiot. That's what you do. And I listened. Nothing. Diesel idle from my own tractor. A truck shifting through gears on I-95 a half-mile away, somewhere very far off, what might have been a freighter horn from the port at Newark. I knocked once with my knuckle. Soft. The way you'd knock on a hotel room door when you weren't sure if the previous guest had checked out yet. Just a tap. Nothing knocked back. I told myself the lock was a quirk. Some loader at the origin yard had been showing off, or had screwed up, or had been told to do it that way for an insurance reason I didn't understand. I told myself, empty pallets don't move, and 41,000 pounds was a typo, and the seat being warm meant somebody was just on a smoke break in the building I hadn't noticed yet. I climbed back in the cab and rolled out at 7:54 p.m., and I'd told myself enough things by then to make my hands stop shaking on the wheel. I-78 west out of Linden at night is one of the most populated freight corridors in the country. There are trucks every quarter mile. There are state troopers in the median. There are pilot and TA, and Love's truck stops every 20 exits, all of them lit up like county fairs. I want to keep saying this because part of what made the next 8 hours wrong was that none of them mattered. I crossed into Pennsylvania a little after 9. I was running easy, 62 in the right lane, AC low country station out of Allentown on the radio because the FM was clearer than the satellite at that hour. I was thinking about whether I'd cash the check and put it toward rent or put it toward the truck payment my brother-in-law had co-signed for, and I was no longer thinking about the padlock at all. Then the trailer brakes hissed. Air brakes hiss when you set them. They hiss when you release them. They hiss if there's a leak in the line, a slow pressure drop you'd see on the gauge in the dash. They do not hiss for no reason while you're rolling in the right lane at 62, doing nothing with your foot. I looked at the gauge. Both tanks were green, primary and secondary, sitting at 120 pounds per square inch. No leak indicator, no ABS light, no drag. The truck was pulling normally. Whatever I had heard, the brakes hadn't actually engaged, but I had heard the hiss. The same hiss I'd heard 100 times standing next to a parked rig, and it had come from behind me. I pulled into the next service plaza on instinct. It was a Pilot in Bethel. Exit 13 off I-78, the big one. 24 islands, a Wendy's and Arby's, drivers everywhere. The lot half full of sleeper cabs settling in for the night. I parked at the back away from the islands, set the brake, climbed down. I walked to the trailer again. Tires fine. Airlines fine. Suspension level. I stood at the back and looked at the padlock. It was where I'd left it, on the inside of the latch. Keyhole facing in. A driver 2 slots over called something to me from his cab. "You good, brother?" And I said, "Yeah, just checking a tire." And I waved, and he waved back. And that small, ordinary exchange between 2 men in a parking lot was the last thing I felt was normal, until much later. I got back in. I sat with the engine running. I pulled out my phone to call Vance, to tell him about the lock, the brakes, the weight, all of it, and the phone rang in my hand before I could open the contact. 908 area code. Vance. I picked up. "Mark, just checking in. Everything okay back there?" "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, fine. Quick question. There's a lock on the back doors that's hung kind of weird. Did the loader at Origin—" "Sure," he said. "That's how the customer wants it. Don't worry about it. You're not opening the doors anyway." "Right," I said. "I just wanted to flag it." "Appreciate that. You all good otherwise?" I almost asked him about the brakes. I almost asked him about the weight. I had the words ready in my mouth. I don't know exactly why I didn't say them. I think it was because his voice had a quality I hadn't noticed on our earlier call, a kind of patience. And I felt suddenly like I was being graded on something and I wanted to do well. "All good," I said. "Great. One more thing, Mark. The customer's a little particular. If you hear anything from the back, anything that sounds like the load shifting, anything at all, you don't need to do anything about it. Just keep driving. The load is secured." "Okay. Thanks, Mark." He hung up. I sat in the lot at the Pilot in Bethel for maybe 4 minutes. I watched a couple come out of the Wendy's holding hands, get into a Subaru, drive away. I watched a guy in a red vest empty a trash can. I told myself the conversation had been ordinary. I told myself dispatchers said things like that all the time and I was making it weird. Then I pulled out and got back on I-78 West, and I drove for another 2 hours and 45 minutes without anything happening. And somewhere along the way, I started feeling all right again, the way you do when nothing has gone wrong for long enough that you stop expecting it to. Around 11:30, I came off I-78 onto US 1 South because Vance had texted me a routing update. Avoid the turnpike. Take 1 to 130 to 295. Customer preference. And US 1 at that hour was almost empty. Strip malls closed. A Wawa with 3 cars in the lot. The street lights on the median doing their slow yellow pulse. I hit a stretch outside Edison where the road opens up flat and wide between 2 industrial parks, and there's nothing on either side for maybe a mile, just blacktop and fence and the sodium glow of warehouses you can't see from the road. That's when the phone rang again. 908 area code. Vance. Mark, just checking in. Everything okay back there? I almost said yes the way I had the first time. I had the word in my mouth, but something in the phrasing snagged on me. The way he said back there. I was alone in a cab. There was no back there in the sense he meant. There was a trailer. There was a load. There was no there that contained anyone he could be asking about. Yeah, I said, why? The customer's concerned about the cargo. They want you to confirm the trailer is still secure. It's secure? There was a small pause. Mark, they want me to ask you something specific. Can you hear anything from the trailer right now? I listened. The cab was full of its own noise. The engine, the road, the AC, the radio low. But underneath all that, I tried to hear past the back wall of the sleeper into the box behind it. I couldn't hear anything. No, I said, I can't hear anything. Good. He said, that's good. Listen, they wanted me to tell you something and I'm just passing it along. This isn't from me. He paused. He was reading. They can hear you breathing through the wall, and they want to know if you can hear them. I didn't answer. Mark, you still there? I hung up. I pulled onto the shoulder of US 1 and I sat there with the 4-ways on. The cab clock said 11:48 p.m. The flat, empty stretch of road was no longer flat and empty in a comforting way. It was flat and empty in the way an animal's territory is flat and empty when the animal has cleared it. I sat there for a long time. The whole time I sat there, I did not look in the rear-view camera feed at the bottom of my dash screen. I have thought about that too, many times, about why I didn't look. The feed was right there, a little square, showing the inside of the trailer in grainy infrared green. I had glanced at it twice already that night and seen exactly what I was supposed to see. Stacked crates I hadn't loaded, ratchet straps I hadn't tied, the back doors closed, the padlock visible from inside like a small dark fruit hanging in the latch. I think I didn't look because I already knew that if I looked, the square would no longer be empty. Eventually I made myself get out of the cab. I told myself I was going to walk around to the back of the trailer and look at the doors and confirm nothing had changed and get back in and finish the run. Because the alternative was sitting on the shoulder of US 1 in Edison until the sun came up, and I needed the $400, and I was a grown man who had hauled freight before. I opened the door. I climbed down. The road was quiet. No headlights in either direction. The mercury vapor lights of a self-storage place across the median made everything look slightly green. I walked along the curb side of the trailer, toward the back. My hand brushed the side panel. The metal was warm. Not engine warm, not sun warm. It was almost midnight, and the trailer hadn't been in sunlight in 5 hours, but warm the way a wall in a house is warm when there's a heater running on the other side of it. I got to the back. I stepped around to face the doors. The padlock was still on the inside of the latch, but it had moved. When I'd hooked up in Linden, the keyhole had been pointing slightly down and to the right, the way a lock hangs naturally from a hasp under its own weight. I had noted it without meaning to, the way you note the angle of a picture frame on a wall you walk past every day. The keyhole was now pointing up and to the left. The lock was still through both loops, still snug, still shut. But somebody on the inside of the trailer had taken it in their hand and turned it over. I stood there in the green light and I listened. From the other side of the door, from somewhere very close to where my face was, I heard a long, slow, deliberate breath in, and then I heard it go out. I want to say I ran. I want to say I got back in the cab right away and put the truck in gear and got off that shoulder. That's not what I did. What I did was stand there. The breath had come and gone, and I waited to hear another one, because I needed to know if I'd imagined the first. A car went past on US 1 going the other direction, headlights swinging across the front of the trailer, and in the half-second of brighter light, I saw the door seam very clearly. The rubber gasket, the small bead of moisture along the bottom of the right-hand door, where condensation had run down. The car went by. The lights swung off. I listened. No second breath came. I told myself a thing then, and I want to be honest about what I told myself because it matters. I told myself the breath had been the air conditioner condenser on the reefer unit cycling. The reefer wasn't running, but reefer units can vent residual pressure, and the unit was at the front of the trailer about 40 feet from where I was standing, and at night sounds carry weird, and I was tired and I had spent the last 15 minutes scaring myself. I told myself this for about 4 seconds. Then I put my hand on the right-hand door, palm flat against the metal, the way you'd put your hand on a person's chest to feel them breathing. The door moved. Not much. Maybe a 1/4 inch. The kind of give you'd get if someone on the other side leaned against it gently and then took their weight off again. The padlock stayed locked. The latch stayed in the keepers, but the door pushed out against my palm and then settled back once, like a press and release, and I took my hand away and I stepped back into the gravel of the shoulder. I walked back to the cab in a fast, controlled walk. I did not run. I kept thinking about the trooper that might come along and ask me why I was running on the shoulder of US 1 at midnight. I climbed into the driver's seat, and I closed the door, and I locked it with the manual button on the panel, even though I had never in my life locked a tractor door from the inside while driving. I sat there with my hands on the wheel. The dash clock said 11:53 p.m. The dispatcher had hung up on me 5 minutes ago. I had been on the shoulder for less than that. I picked up my phone, and I scrolled through my recent calls, and I pulled up Vance's number, the 908 area code, and I held my thumb over it. I wanted to call him and yell. I wanted to call him and tell him I was leaving the truck on the shoulder and walking away, and he could come get his Freightliner and his haunted trailer himself. I wanted to ask him what the customer was. I tapped the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. It went to voicemail. The voicemail was the default carrier message. The person you are trying to reach is not available. At the tone, please record your message. No name, no greeting, no company. I waited for the tone and then I didn't say anything and I hung up. I tried again. Same thing. 3 rings, default voicemail, no name. I pulled up the email he had sent me at 5:02 p.m. that afternoon. The contact line said dispatch contact A. Vance. The signature at the bottom said DeLon Hauling, dispatch ops. No website, no address. The phone number was the same 908. I copy-pasted DeLon Hauling into a search engine and I got nothing useful. A Louisiana family name page, a LinkedIn for a man in Quebec, a Yelp listing for a moving company in Lafayette that had closed in 2017. No New Jersey freight outfit. Nothing in 1140 Tremley Point Road, Linden. I searched the address. Google Street View showed a gravel lot with chain link fence and no signage, photographed in 2022, exactly the way I'd seen it 3 hours earlier. I sat with all of that for a minute and I thought about what I knew. I knew I had a cargo I hadn't been allowed to see in a trailer, locked from the inside on a route the dispatcher kept rerouting me along for a company that didn't exist in any way I could verify, going to a delivery address I had not yet looked at carefully. For a man who told me the cargo could hear me breathe, I want to flag something here because I've gone back over this stretch of the night more than any other part. I think I made a decision in the cab that I didn't recognize as a decision at the time. I think I decided I was going to keep driving. Not because I'd been threatened. Not because Vance had said anything menacing. He hadn't exactly. I decided to keep driving because turning around meant going back to that yard in Linden in the dark. And pulling into a populated truck stop with a haunted trailer was somehow in the geometry of my fear at that moment less frightening than driving an unhitched tractor back to the place the trailer had come from. Going forward felt like motion. Going back felt like surrender. I have thought about that a lot. I put it in gear and I pulled off the shoulder and I got back on US 1 going south. I drove for about 18 minutes before I let myself look at the rear view camera feed. The little square at the bottom of my dash screen showed the inside of the trailer in grainy infrared green. The fisheye made the back walls bow. I could see the stacked crates in the foreground. Wooden, unmarked, the kind of crate you'd see in any freight yard. And I could see the ratchet straps running over them, and I could see very small the back doors at the far end of the trailer. From the inside of the latch, the padlock was a dark shape against the lighter metal of the door, exactly where it had been when I'd left it. There was no person. I let out a breath I hadn't known I was holding. The crates were where crates would be. The straps were taut. The lock was in its place. The interior of the trailer looked like the interior of any trailer I had ever hauled. I want to register that moment because it's where the false safety lived. I drove for another 10 minutes, thinking maybe I had been spooked by an unusual lock and a weird phrasing on a phone call, and that sometimes night driving does that to you, and that I was 40 miles from the next big truck stop and I'd pull in there and get coffee and reset, and the rest of the run would be ordinary. I came up on the pilot in Bordentown around 12:40 a.m. It's a big one. Off exit 7 on the turnpike. I jumped the turnpike briefly to bypass a closure on 295, and the lot was packed the way only a Friday into Saturday lot is, every long pull occupied, sleepers tucked nose to tail, reefers running, the diesel islands all in use. I found a spot at the very back of the lot against the chain link, and I parked, and I set the brake, and I sat for a minute with the engine off and the cab cooling. I got out. I went into the building. I needed the lights and the fluorescent buzz of a pilot and the smell of coffee and the Muzak version of a Bryan Adams song. I needed people. I bought a coffee and a roller grill hot dog and a bag of peanuts, and I sat at one of the little laminate tables near the trucker showers where there's a TV mounted above the door playing a baseball game with the sound off. I ate the hot dog. I drank the coffee. I scrolled on my phone. I read a news article about a fire in a Port-au-Prince warehouse without retaining a single word. My pulse was getting back to normal. That's when the older driver in the Schneider rig sat down at the table next to mine. He was maybe 60, black, broad-shouldered the way a man gets when he's done physical work for 40 years, in a Schneider Company polo and a clean ball cap that said Local 560. He had a tray with a chicken sandwich and a Diet Coke and a slice of apple pie. He nodded at me when he sat. I nodded back. We ate in parallel for maybe 2 minutes. Then he said conversationally, looking at the TV, "That your red Cascadia at the back of the lot?" I said, "Yeah." He took a bite of his sandwich. He chewed. He swallowed. 48 white box? No logo? Yeah. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the silent baseball game. "How long you been driving for them?" "Tonight's the first night," I said. "It's a one-off." I picked it up off a board. He nodded slowly, the way a man nods when something he was afraid of has just been confirmed. "Okay," he said. He kept eating. I waited. He didn't say anything else. After a minute, I said, "Why?" He set the sandwich down. He turned to face me for the first time, and his eyes were not unkind, but they were tired in a way I have only seen in men who have been awake for 2 days in a row. or who have gotten very bad news. I hauled that trailer in 19, he said, out of the same yard. Linden, Tremley Point. The fluorescent lights of the Pilot did the small flicker they do every few minutes when the compressor on the freezer case kicks. I felt it the way you feel a draft. You're sure it's the same trailer? Number on the nose plate. PSC-something. I remember the run. I remember the number. I remember the lock. I didn't say anything. He picked up his Diet Coke and took a long swallow and set it down. I made it to Carlisle, he said. I drove home. I didn't sleep right for about 6 months. The next guy who took that run didn't drop. I don't know what happened to him. They don't put it in the news. There's no news to put it in. But I asked around and the next guy didn't drop. And the guy after him did, and the guy after him did. And I think it goes like that on and off for as long as it's been going. He looked at the TV again. The baseball game cut to a commercial. Listen to me, he said. I'm only going to tell you this once because I have my own load and my own family and I don't want to know your name. There's an exit coming up. Exit 5. New Jersey Turnpike. You take it and you bear right onto 541 toward Mount Holly. There's a Pep Boys about a mile in on the right with a back lot where they leave junk cars. You park the truck there and you walk away. You leave the keys in it. You don't call dispatch. You don't go back to that yard. Whatever they've paid you, you don't cash it. You walk away. You hear me? I said, why are you telling me this? He looked at me again. There was something in his face I didn't understand at the time, and I want to put it down honestly. It wasn't fear. It was something closer to guilt. Like he was paying off a small old debt in a currency he hadn't expected to be able to spend. Because I dropped, he said, and I shouldn't have. He got up. He took his tray to the trash. He went out the side door of the Pilot toward the lot. I watched him walk between the rows of trucks toward a blue Schneider tractor about 4 spots over from mine, and I watched him climb up into his cab. Then I watched him sit there for a long time before he started the engine. I think he was praying. I don't know. I sat at my table with the hot dog wrapper and the empty coffee cup. I thought about the $400. I thought about the $1,800 I owed in rent. I thought about my sister Janelle, who kept telling me I should just move in with her and her roommate until I got back on my feet, and how I'd kept saying no to that for reasons that suddenly seemed like vanity. I thought about Exit 5, Pep Boys, walk away. I want to put on the record that I knew, sitting at that laminate table at 1 a.m, that the older driver was telling me the truth. I knew it the way you know. Somebody is telling you the truth when they don't want to be telling you anything at all. I sat there knowing it. I didn't move yet. I sat there because I needed another minute under the fluorescent lights with people around me, and because I wanted to finish making the decision instead of being chased out of the building by it. I picked up my phone and opened the email from Vance and looked at the bill of lading again. Empty pallets returnable. 41,200 pounds. Origin Linden, NJ. Destination 220 Industrial Park Drive. Carlisle, PA. Recipient Penn Logistics. Receiving Bay 4. I had not searched the recipient. I searched it now. Penn Logistics existed. Carlisle, PA. Real warehouse. Real address. Photos on the website. A normal-looking building with a normal-looking parking lot and a phone number with a 717 area code. I almost felt better. I almost called them. Then I noticed the operating hours listed on the site. Receiving 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. They were closed. They had been closed since 5 o'clock that afternoon. They would not be open again until 7 a.m. Monday morning, which was 30 hours away. Vance had told me to drop and release. The receiving bay was closed. I put the phone down. I looked up. He was sitting in a booth across the dining area near the window that looked out on the fuel islands. He had a paper cup of coffee in front of him and a folded jacket over the bench beside him. He was not looking at me. He was looking out at the lot, at the row where my red Freightliner was parked. He was a man in his early 50s, white, thinning hair combed flat, narrow shoulders, the kind of unremarkable face you forget on the way out of the room. I had not seen his face clearly in the yard in Linden because he had stayed out of the floodlight, but I knew his shoulders and the line of his jaw and the way he held a paper cup because I had spent the last 7 hours hearing his voice in my ear. It was Vance. He took a sip of his coffee. He set the cup down. He didn't turn his head. He didn't acknowledge me. The pilot in Bordentown is 212 miles from the yard in Linden by the route I had driven. More if you went through Trenton. I had pulled out of Linden at 7:54. It was now 1:08 a.m. He had not been ahead of me at any point. There had been no second car in the yard. He had not passed me on the road. I would have seen him. You see everyone on the road at night. He sat in the booth and watched my truck. I want to put down what I did next, exactly because in retrospect, it was the closest I came to pulling the right string. I got up. I left my trash on the table. I walked, not fast and not slow, out the side door of the Pilot, across the apron to the back row, climbed into my cab, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. I went south on the turnpike. I watched the mile markers count down, 7-6, and as I came up on exit 5, I had the turn signal on and my hand on the wheel. I didn't take the exit. I want to be very honest about why. I'd love to tell you it was because I was worried about Janelle, or because I had a plan, or because I had decided to do something brave. None of that is true. I didn't take the exit because the moment I lifted my foot to brake, the trailer rocked behind me. Once. A clear, deliberate weight shift. The same kind I'd felt at the hookup in Linden. The kind that happens when something inside an enclosed space changes its mind about where it wants to be. The truck pulled slightly to the right under it, and I understood in the small animal part of me that does not make decisions with words, that whatever was in the trailer would prefer I not take exit 5. I put my foot back on the accelerator. The trailer settled. I drove past the exit. The signal was still blinking on the dash, and I had to reach down and click it off. I want to log that. I want to log that. I drove past the exit because something I was pulling told me to. I drove for another 14 minutes south on the turnpike before I let myself look at the camera feed again. I had not looked at it once since Bethel. I looked at it now. The grainy infrared green showed the inside of the trailer, the crates, the ratchet straps, the far end, the back doors, the padlock. The padlock was on the outside of the latch. I want you to understand what this means, because the geometry is the whole thing. The fisheye camera was mounted to the front wall of the trailer, looking back toward the rear doors. From that angle, you see the inside face of the rear doors. If a padlock is hung inside the latch, the way it had been since Linden, the camera sees the body of the lock, the keyhole, the heavy part. If a padlock is hung outside the latch, the normal way, the camera sees only the shackle, the thin metal U poking through the loops, with the body of the lock invisible behind the door. The feed showed the shackle, just the U. The body of the lock was on the other side of the door now. From the road, from the world, where it should have been all along. I don't know how long I stared at it. Long enough that the truck drifted slightly, and the rumble strips on the right shoulder pulled me back into the lane. I got my hands right on the wheel, and I looked at the feed again. The padlock was on the inside of the latch. Body, keyhole, weight, all on the trailer side, exactly as it had been in Linden. I blinked. The image did not change. I watched it for 30 seconds. The lock stayed inside. I wondered if I had imagined the previous frame. I wondered if the camera had glitched. I wondered if the infrared had inverted somehow, the way a negative photograph inverts. Then between 1 second and the next, with no transition I could see, the body of the lock was gone again, and the shackle was alone in the latch. Outside, a second later, inside, a second later, outside. It flipped 4 more times while I watched, evenly spaced about once per second, and then it stopped, on inside, and stayed there. The pattern of it, the regularity, the way it landed on inside at the end of it. felt less like a malfunction and more like someone on the other side of the camera turning the lock over in their hand the way a man turns a coin while he thinks. I made myself look up at the road. I made myself check my mirrors. I was alone in my lane. There was a Walmart truck about a quarter mile ahead of me and a dark sedan a quarter mile behind. I was doing 63 in the right lane on the New Jersey Turnpike at 1:23 a.m. and I had a man in my trailer who was deciding which side of the door he wanted the lock to be on. The phone buzzed in the cup holder. It wasn't a call, it was a text. From the 908 number. The text said, "He likes you. He says you drove past the exit. He says that was the right thing to do." I did not look at the camera feed again for a long time after that. I drove. The turnpike turned into 95. 95 turned into 81. The mile markers went from green to a different green. I kept both hands on the wheel, and I kept the truck in the right lane, and I did the speed limit, and I did not change lanes unnecessarily, and I told myself I would think about what to do when I got past Harrisburg, and then when I got past Harrisburg, I told myself I would think about what to do when I got to the Carlisle exit, and somewhere in there, around 2:45 in the morning, the phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, not the 908 number. It was my sister Janelle. She never called me at 3 in the morning. She worked nights at the hospital, and she knew my schedule, and she did not call me at 3 in the morning unless something was wrong. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up. "Janelle?" The voice that answered said my name, and it was her voice, and it said it the way she always said it. "Marky, hey," with the small sigh she always put at the front of a phone call because she hated phone calls. But underneath her voice, very faint, almost lost in the line noise, I could hear something else. I could hear someone breathing through a wall. I held the phone to my ear, and I did not say anything for a second longer than was natural. I was listening past her voice. The breathing under the line was slow and even, the way a person breathes who is sitting still in a chair with nothing to do, and it had the small, hollow quality of a sound coming through metal. "Janelle," I said, "where are you?" "At work," she said. "Why? Are you in the building?" "Yeah, I'm at the nurse's station. I'm on a 15. Mark, are you okay? You sound weird." I made myself breathe. The dash clock said 2:47 a.m. I had passed Harrisburg 20 minutes ago. The Carlisle exits were coming up. Exit 52 was about 11 miles ahead, and the address Vance had given me was off exit 49. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm working a run. I'm in Pennsylvania." "At 3 in the morning?" "Yeah." "For who?" "It's a one-night thing. Off the boards." "Listen, are you alone right now?" "There's like 4 people standing around the station, Mark. What is going on with you?" "Nothing," I said. "Nothing, sorry. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay." There was a pause. The breathing under the line continued. She didn't seem to hear it. I could hear it as clearly as I could hear her, and she was talking right over the top of it as if it weren't there. Then she said, very casual, the way you ask somebody a thing you've been meaning to ask and only just remembered. "Hey, do you remember the tree fort behind Aunt Lou's house?" I almost answered. I had the answer in my mouth. Yeah, of course, the tree fort behind Aunt Lou's house in Phillipsburg, the one Uncle Ray built out of pallet wood when I was 9, and Janelle was 6, the one with the rope ladder he made us pull up after we climbed in so the dogs couldn't get up there. We'd called it the lookout. Janelle had a notebook up there. She hid under a loose board. I had not thought about the tree fort in 20 years. I had not told Vance about the tree fort. I had not told anyone in this run about Phillipsburg or Aunt Lou or Uncle Ray or any of it. There was no reason in the world for that question to be asked at 2:47 a.m. on a phone call from my sister. The voice on the other end was Janelle's voice. The cadence was Janelle's cadence. The tiny throat clear before the question was Janelle's throat clear. But Janelle had no reason to ask about the tree fort. And the breathing under the line was the breathing I had heard at the back of the trailer outside Edison. I said, "What?" "The tree fort," the voice said. "Behind Aunt Lou's. You remember?" I was thinking about it. "Janelle," I said, do me a favor. Can you put your hand on the desk for me, the nurse's station desk? Just put your hand flat on it and tell me what it feels like. There was the smallest pause. Mark, she said, I have to go. Somebody's calling me. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand. The road ahead was mostly empty. 2 trucks far up in the left lane. A state trooper parked in the median with his lights off about a mile back. The cab smelled like cold coffee. The dash clock turned over to 2:48. The phone buzzed in my hand. The 908 number. I picked up. Mark, Vance said. Hey, listen, I know that was a weird call. I want to explain. I did not say anything. He hears your phone calls, Mark. Through the wall. He always has. He doesn't mean anything by it. He's just been doing this a long time, and he gets, curious. He picks up on things. He likes to ask about them. Who is he? I said. Oh, he's the customer. Who is he? A pause. Vance breathed out. A small, patient breath. He's been on this route a long time, he said. He's our regular. We move him from yard to yard every few weeks. The guys who haul him the right way usually pick up some regular work after. It pays well, Mark. The $400 is what we pay first-timers. It goes up after that. Who is he? I'm not going to be able to give you a satisfying answer to that. I don't have one. I dispatch him. I don't ask. The people who hired me when I started, they didn't ask either. I can tell you what I know. Works. I can tell you what doesn't. Was that my sister? Was what your sister? The call I just got? A longer pause. He sounded, for the first time all night, like he was choosing his words. Mark, he said, your sister called you? That part is real. He doesn't make calls. He doesn't have a phone. What he does is he listens to your side of a call, and sometimes he, participates. You and your sister are talking, and he's 2 feet on the other side of the wall, and he hears her voice come out of your speaker, and he hears your voice answer, and he gets in there somewhere. I don't know how. I don't pretend to know how. The drivers who've worked him a few times, they say after a while you just let it happen, and the calls come out like normal again, and your sister doesn't remember the weird ones. He used a memory of mine. He asked about a tree fort. Yeah. How? You've been talking to her on the phone in the cab for the last 6 hours, Mark. He's been listening for 6 hours. He picks things up. I haven't talked to my sister tonight. A very long pause. You have, Vance said gently. You called her at 9:20 to tell her you got a gig, and you called her at 11:05 to tell her you were on the turnpike, and you called her at 12:40 to tell her you were stopping for coffee. He listened to all 3. You don't remember those? I did not remember those. I sat in the right lane of I-81 South, going 63 miles per hour, and I tried to remember calling my sister 3 times that night, and I could not. I remembered the call I had just had. I remembered thinking an hour ago that I should call her in the morning. I did not remember any other calls. I picked up the phone and looked at my recent calls list with my thumb. The list showed 3 outgoing calls to Janelle that night at 9:21 p.m. and 11:06 p.m. and 12:43 a.m., durations of 7 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes. Above them, the incoming call at 2:46 a.m. Below them, all the older history I expected to see. Texts to my landlord. A call to my mother last Sunday. I did not remember making any of those 3 calls. Mark, Vance said. You still there? Yes. Listen, I want to talk to you about something. He likes you. I told you that earlier, and I wasn't kidding around. He's the guy at the table at the Pilot. That was me. I was checking on you. He doesn't usually settle. With most drivers, it's a one-time thing. They haul him, they drop, they go home. Sometimes they get a little weirded out and they don't pick up again. That's fine. The world is full of drivers. With you, he's comfortable. He told me, and I'm just passing it along, this isn't from me. He told me he'd like you to do the regular route. What does that mean? 1 night a month? Sometimes 2? Pick up wherever we tell you? Drop wherever we tell you? The pay is $1,000 a night to start, $1,200 after the 3rd run. You can ask for $15 by the end of the year, and nobody will blink. You don't have to open the trailer. You don't have to talk to him. The phone calls thing, you'll get used to it. The drivers who do this for a while, it stops bothering them. It becomes a thing they do, like night shift. You with me? I was still in the right lane. The Carlisle exits were 5 miles away. Vance, I said, I need you to answer one question for me. Sure. What happens to the drivers who say no? A pause. They go home, Mark. They go home and they don't take the next call. What happens to their families? A longer pause. Nothing happens to their families. Nothing has to happen. He's not like that. He's a customer. He pays. He gets where he's going. He picks the people he likes. The ones he doesn't pick, they go on with their lives. The driver before me who didn't drop. That's a story drivers tell each other. I don't have a comment on it. You said the ones he doesn't pick. What about the ones he does pick who say no? A very long pause this time. Long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. It hadn't. Mark, he said, pull off at the next rest area, just for a minute. Take a look at what's in the trailer. Then call me back. I said, I'm not opening the doors. You don't have to open the doors. There's a service door on the curbside near the front. It's recessed in the panel. You wouldn't have noticed it on your walk. It's not locked. Open that one. Take a look. Then we'll talk. I said, why? Because once you see it, you'll know what you're saying yes or no to. And he wants you to know. He hung up. The next rest area sign came up 2 miles later, and I took it. I want to be careful here, because the next 10 minutes are the part of the night I keep coming back to and the part I am most afraid I will misremember. I'm going to put down what I think happened. If something is wrong, it's wrong because of how my head was that night, not because I'm trying to make it seem worse than it was. The rest area was the small kind, no fuel, no food, just a block bathroom building and a parking apron and a vending machine pavilion. There were 3 trucks already there, sleepers in for the night, all parked at the far end. I pulled in at the near end, a long pull-through with no trucks on either side, and I set the brake and I shut the engine off, and I sat for a second listening to the metal of the engine tick. Then I climbed down with the flashlight from under the seat, and I walked along the curb side of the trailer, up toward the front. The service door was where Vance said it would be. I had walked past it 3 times that night and not seen it. It was recessed, flush with the panel. No handle, no hinge visible from outside. Just a thin seam shaped like a door, if you knew to look for one. There was a small finger pull at chest height. I put my finger in, and I pulled. The door opened outward with a soft sigh, the kind a fridge makes when the seal breaks. The inside of the trailer was warm, not hot, not cold storage cold, body warm, the temperature of a room with a person in it. The flashlight beam went in maybe 4 feet before it hit something. What it hit was a folding chair, a nylon and aluminum camp chair, the kind you take to a kid's soccer game, set up facing the front wall of the trailer. There was a thermos on the floor next to it, the metal kind, maybe 16 ounces, the cap not quite screwed on. There was a sleeping bag rolled up against the wall. There was a paperback book face down on the chair, splayed open at the spine. I couldn't read the cover from where I was standing. There was no person in the chair. I put the flashlight up and looked further in. The crates I had seen on the camera feed, the stacked wooden crates, the ratchet straps, were further back, maybe 15 feet in, exactly where the camera had shown them. They were real crates. The straps were real straps. But between the chair and the crates, in the space between the side wall and the stacked freight, there was a stack of paper on a milk crate. Bills of lading, a stack of them. Maybe 40, maybe 50 deep. I should not have stepped inside. I want to log that. I knew, standing on the apron of that rest area at 3 in the morning, that stepping inside that trailer was a different thing than opening the door, and that you can open a door and back away. And you can't unstep into a room. I stepped inside anyway. I want to be honest about that. The floor gave a little under my boot. A trailer floor doesn't give. Trailer floors are oak plank over steel cross members. and they don't give the way a house floor gives. This one had the smallest amount of springiness in it, the way a floor feels when you're standing over a void. I went still. Then the give was gone, and the floor was as solid as it should have been. I was not sure I had felt the give. I am still not sure. I took 2 more steps in. I crouched at the milk crate. I picked up the top bill of lading. It was on the same letterhead as mine, DeLon Hauling. The format was identical. The cargo description said empty pallets, returnable. The weight said 41,200 pounds. The origin was Linden, New Jersey. The destination was a warehouse in Allentown dated 4 weeks before. The driver line at the bottom was signed with a name I didn't know, in a hand I didn't know, with a CDL number I didn't know. Above the signature, in the same hand, the driver had printed his name in block letters, L. Chen. I lifted that one off the stack and looked at the next. Same letterhead, same cargo description, same weight, different destination, a yard outside Scranton. Different driver, R. Pryor Jr., dated 9 weeks before. I went through 5 more different destinations every time. Scranton, Allentown, Wilkes-Barre, Frederick, Maryland, Hagerstown, a place in Connecticut I'd never heard of. Different drivers, different signatures, the same trailer, the same cargo. The dates went backward, one every 3 or 4 weeks, the paper getting yellower as I went deeper. I pulled one from about 2/3 of the way down. It was dated June 14th, 2019. The driver's signature line said R. Jefferson. The hand was a steady block letter hand, the kind a man uses who has been signing his name on government paperwork for 30 years. I knew the name without having to think about it. The older driver in the Schneider Polo at the Pilot in Bordentown had not given me his name, but I had read it on the embroidery above his pocket, without registering it at the time. Jefferson. He had told me he hauled it in 19, and he'd dropped, and he'd been telling me the truth, and the receipt of it was in my hand. I went back to the top of the stack, and I lifted off the topmost sheet, the one I had read first, L. Chen, and looked at the one underneath it. This is the part I need to put down carefully. The bill of lading underneath L. Chen's was on the same letterhead. Cargo. Empty pallets. Returnable. Weight. 41,200 pounds. Origin Linden and J. Destination 220 Industrial Park Drive, Carlisle, PA. The same destination as my run. Date. 22 days from tonight. Driver. Mark Rewell. The signature was mine. Not a forgery of mine. It was mine, the way I sign my name on a credit card slip when I'm tired, with the M tall and the K underbitten and the E smaller than the other letters. The block letter print above the signature was mine, the same way I make a 4, with the open top, the same way I run my R's into the next letter without lifting the pen. The CDL number was my CDL number. It was correct. I had not signed this paper. The paper was sitting on top of 40 other papers in the trailer of a load I had picked up 6 hours ago. I had signed nothing tonight in a way that produced a copy. The bill of lading I had signed at hookup had been the email, PDF, and a finger signature on Vance's tablet at the gate, which I had only just now remembered doing. I had not signed paper. I had certainly not signed paper 22 days from now. I held the sheet under the flashlight and I read it over and over. I checked the date. I checked the signature. I held it against the light to see if it was a print, a copy, an overlay. It was paper. It was paper the way the paper underneath it was paper. The signature was ink. The ink had bled very slightly into the fiber, the way ink does when the pen sits on the page for a half second too long. I put the sheet down carefully on top of the stack. I straightened it so the corners aligned with L. Chen's underneath. I stood up. I want to log the sequence of what I felt next, because I think it matters. The first thing I felt was not fear. The first thing I felt was a kind of tired clarity, the way you feel when you have been losing an argument and you suddenly realize you have already lost. The second thing I felt was anger, hot and clean, at Vance and at this trailer and at whatever was running this and at the fact that they had drafted me onto a list of names without asking. The third thing I felt was fear, but it was a specific kind of fear. The fear of someone realizing that the way out of the room is not through any of the doors he has tried. The fourth thing I felt was that I was not alone in the trailer. I had been crouching in front of the milk crate, looking at paper for maybe 90 seconds. In that 90 seconds, the temperature in the trailer had risen very slightly by some amount I could not have measured but could feel on the back of my neck. The warm room warmth of when I had stepped in had become a hair more like a warm room with a person in it warmth. I did not turn around. I did not move the flashlight. I stood up slowly, the way you stand up when there's a wasp on the back of your hand. From somewhere past the stacked crates in the deeper part of the trailer that the flashlight beam did not reach, I heard a man clear his throat. It was not a loud throat clear. It was the small, polite kind a person makes when he has been standing quietly in a room for a while and wants to let you know considerately that he is there. The way an older man clears his throat when he has come up behind you in a hardware store and is waiting for you to step aside so he can look at the bin you're blocking. I did not look toward the sound. I walked, not fast and not slow, back toward the service door. I stepped out onto the apron. I pulled the door shut behind me. The seal side closed. The seam in the panel disappeared. I stood on the gravel for a second with my flashlight off and my hand on the side of the trailer to keep myself upright. The phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text. The 908 number. The text said, "He says you can leave. He'll find a different one. He says thank you for being polite about it." I read the text twice. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked back to the cab. I climbed in. I sat with my hands on the wheel. I did not start the engine right away. I sat there and I did the math out loud the way I do when I'm trying to make myself believe something. I said, he's letting me go. I said, I open the side door. I see the chair. I see the papers. I get the message. I say, no, I leave. That's the deal. That's the out. I said it twice. I said, Vance told me the drivers who don't pick up again, they go on with their lives. Then I thought about Janelle and the breathing under the line and the tree fort question and the 3 phone calls I did not remember making and the way the phantom Janelle had hung up the second I asked her to put her hand on the desk. He hadn't been listening to me on the phone for 6 hours. He had been listening to her. I started the engine. I did not pull out yet. I sat with the engine running and the dash lights low, and I did the most useful thing I'd done all night, which was open my phone and start a note and type with both thumbs. Every single thing I could remember about the run from the email at 5:02 p.m. forward. The yard, the lock, the wait, the hiss, the first call, the second call, the driver at the Pilot Jefferson, the man at the booth, the exit I didn't take, the text after, the third call, the tree fort, the service door, the chair, the thermos, the papers, L. Chen, R. Pryor Jr., R. Jefferson, my own name dated 3 weeks out, the throat clearing. I typed for maybe 12 minutes. I attached 2 photos I had taken without thinking. I did not remember taking them, but they were in my camera roll. Time-stamped 3:04 a.m. and 3:04 a.m., one of the milk crate from above and one of the bill of lading with my own name on it. I emailed the note and the photos to my own personal Gmail and to a backup address I'd made years ago for tax stuff. Then I wrote a 1-line text to Janelle. If anything happens to me tonight, check your email. I sent you something. And I almost sent it. I deleted it instead. I deleted it because if he was listening to her, then telling her anything was telling him, and the only protection she had right now was the fact that she did not know. I put the phone down. I put the truck in gear. I pulled out of the rest area onto the on-ramp. The exit for 220 Industrial Park Drive, the Penn Logistics warehouse that closed at 5 p.m. on Friday and would not open again until Monday morning, was 3 miles ahead. I had been intending to go to it, drop the trailer in the receiving lot, and walk away. I did not take that exit either. I stayed on I-81 South. I drove past the Carlisle exits. I drove for another 11 minutes south into a stretch of populated suburban Pennsylvania where there were exits every 2 miles and gas stations at every exit and a Wawa with a lit sign visible from the highway. And at the next exit I came up on, I put on my signal and I went down the ramp and I pulled into the Wawa parking lot at 3:21 a.m. and I parked the truck across 2 spots near the road with the engine still running and the parking brake set. I left the keys in the ignition. I climbed down and I walked across the apron toward the door of the Wawa. The lot had 3 other cars in it. There was a kid in a Wawa uniform mopping behind the deli counter. A woman in scrubs was paying for a coffee at the register. Behind me in the parking lot, the trailer rocked once. A clear, deliberate weight shift. The kind that happens when something inside an enclosed space changes its mind about where it wants to be. I did not turn around. I went inside. The Wawa was bright in the way Wawas are bright at 3 in the morning, which is brighter than the rest of the world has any business being. The tile was very clean. The cooler doors hummed. The kid behind the deli counter was mopping in slow rectangular passes and did not look up when I came in. The woman in scrubs took her coffee and her paper bag and left, and the small electronic chime on the door announced her going. And then it was me and the kid and the cashier, who was maybe 20, with a thin mustache and a name tag that said, Brendan. I went to the back. I bought a bottle of water and a packet of ibuprofen I didn't need, and I brought them up to the counter so I would have a reason to be standing there. I paid in cash. I asked Brendan if there was a phone I could use. He looked at me like I had asked him for a horse. You don't have a phone, sir? I do, I said. It's in my truck. I'm going to leave it there. Is there a phone in here, like a courtesy phone? He thought about it. He pointed to the wall by the bathroom where there was a small black phone mounted at chest height with a sticker on it that said, Emergencies only. Dial 9 first. Probably you're not supposed to use it for personal stuff, he said. But it's like 4 in the morning, I guess. I thanked him. I went over to the phone. I dialed 9, and then I dialed Janelle's cell from memory, which I had not had to do in 15 years. She picked up on the 3rd ring. She sounded asleep. Hello? Janelle, it's Mark. Mark? A pause. The sound of her sitting up. What number is this? Where are you calling from? A payphone in a Wawa in Pennsylvania. Listen, are you okay? Am I... What? What time is it? It's 3:30 in the morning. Listen to me. Did you call me tonight? A longer pause. The sound of her processing the way she does, where you can hear her making a mental list before she answers. No, she said. I haven't talked to you since Tuesday. Why? You weren't at the hospital tonight. I'm not on tonight. I picked up a Sunday, so I traded out. I've been home since 7. Mark, what is going on? I closed my eyes. I leaned my forehead against the wall above the phone. The wall was cool. Nothing, I said. Nothing's going on. I'm sorry I woke you up. I'm fine. I'm going to get a ride home. I'll call you in the morning. Mark? Yeah. Are you in trouble? No. Are you using? No, Janelle, I'm not using. I had a job tonight that went bad and I'm walking away from it and I needed to hear your voice, and now I have. Go back to sleep. I'll call you when I'm home. She didn't say anything for a second. Then she said, Okay, I love you. Call me. Love you. Sleep. I hung up. I stood with my hand on the phone for a minute. The phone was warm under my palm where I had been holding the receiver. I thought about the fact that I had heard Janelle's voice at 2:47 a.m. on a phone call she had not made, and that she had been at home, asleep, while a thing inside a trailer had asked me a question only I should have been able to answer. I thought about her saying, Am I what? I thought about the cadence of that. It was the same cadence the phantom Janelle had used. He was very good at it. He had had a long time to practice. I went back to the counter. I asked Brendan if I could use the phone again to call a friend for a ride. He shrugged and gestured me back toward it. I called my friend Carlos in Bound Brook, who I had worked with at the warehouse, and I woke him up and I told him I was at a Wawa off I-81 in Pennsylvania, about 2.5 hours away, and I needed a ride, and I would pay him for the gas and his time, and Carlos, who is a good man, said he'd be there by 6. I sat in a booth by the window with my bottle of water, and I waited. I want to put down what I was thinking in that booth because it's the part I am clearest on, even though it was the smallest part of the night. I was thinking about whether to call the police. I had a phone in my pocket. I had a Wawa courtesy phone, 15 feet away. I had photographs and a typed note in my email of every detail I could remember. I had a truck in the parking lot with the keys in the ignition and a trailer behind it that contained, as far as I knew, a man, a folding chair, a thermos, a paperback book, and a stack of bills of lading going back 6 years with a stranger inside the freight wall behind them. I sat in the booth and I went through it. Officer, I picked up a one-night driving job tonight off a job board, and I think there's a man living inside the trailer. They would come. Of course they would come. They would unlock the trailer from outside with bolt cutters because they would not understand that the lock was on the inside, and they would walk in with flashlights, and they would find the chair and the thermos and the paperback book, and they would find the milk crate of bills of lading, and they would find the stacked crates, and behind the stacked crates they would find what? A wall, a man, a room, I did not know. I had not gone past the crates. I thought about what the man inside the trailer would do when the police came for him, and I thought about what he would do afterward, and I thought about my photograph of L. Chen's bill of lading and R. Jefferson's bill of lading, and the address on Jefferson's bill of lading that ended in a yard outside Hagerstown, and the fact that Jefferson had told me, they don't put it in the news, there's no news to put it in, and the way he had said, I shouldn't have about the dropping. I thought about the text. He'll find a different one. I thought about the next driver, the one I did not know, the one who would take the call I did not take. I sat in that booth for a long time. I want to say that I made a noble decision in the booth. I did not. I made a tired, frightened, narrow decision. I decided I would not call the police that night. I decided I would call Janelle in the morning and I would not tell her what had happened, because telling her would put it in her head where it could be heard. And I decided I would write everything down and I would keep it written down. And I decided, sitting there with a bottle of water under fluorescent light at 4 a.m, that I would think about what to do with the writing later. I have thought about that decision a lot. I am not proud of it. I am putting it down here, because not putting it down would be a lie. Carlos got there at 5:51 a.m. The sun was coming up. I walked out into the parking lot and the truck was where I had left it, across 2 spots near the road. Engine still running, parking brake set, keys in the ignition. The trailer behind it sat the way trailers sit. Heavy, square, indifferent. I did not walk over to it. I got in the passenger side of Carlos's Civic. He looked at the truck. He looked at me. You leaving that there? Yeah, that's going to get towed. Good. He didn't ask anything else. We pulled out of the lot. I watched the trailer in the side mirror for as long as I could see it. The padlock was on the latch, where it had always been, and from the angle of the side mirror, I could not tell which side of the door it was on. We got back to Bound Brook a little before 9 a.m. I gave Carlos $60 from the emergency cash in my sock drawer. I told him I'd buy him dinner the next week, and he said don't worry about it, and he meant it. I went inside. I drank a glass of water. I lay on top of the covers in my work clothes, and I closed my eyes. I want to say I slept. I did not sleep. I lay there for 2 hours with my eyes closed, and I listened to the radiator tick, and the upstairs neighbor walk to her bathroom and the FedEx truck go by at 10:15, and I cataloged the sounds of an ordinary morning in an ordinary house, and I told myself I was home. At 11 a.m., the phone on my nightstand buzzed. The 908 number. I let it ring. 6 rings. Voicemail picked up. The phone went still. A second later, it buzzed once, the short buzz of a text. The text said, "Hope you got home okay, Mark. He says no hard feelings. The job's closed out clean. If you change your mind, you have the number. I read it twice. I deleted it. I deleted the call history. I plugged the phone into charge, and I rolled over and I finally slept. 4 hours. Dreamless. I want to talk about the next 3 weeks because I feel like I owe an honest account of them, and because the part that came after the 3 weeks doesn't make sense without them. I did not get a check from Vance. I had assumed I wouldn't. I had walked off the job, but I had also assumed there would be a follow-up of some kind, a deduction, a fee, a threat. There was not. The 908 number did not call me again. It did not text me again. I checked it once a day for the first week, the way you check a wound to see if it's getting worse. It stayed quiet. I got hired the second week at a hardware store in Somerville. It was $11 an hour, and it was during the day, and I took it without negotiating. I called Janelle on the Saturday, and we had a normal conversation about her shifts and our mom's hip and a podcast she wanted me to listen to, and she did not bring up the tree fort, and she did not bring up the night I had called her from the Wawa. And at one point I asked her if she remembered me calling her on Friday night, and she said, "No, you called me Sunday. You sent me a meme about birds on Tuesday. I haven't heard from you Friday in weeks." I said, "Okay," I let it go. I kept the typed note and the photos. I did not look at them. I did not delete them. They sat in my email like a brick in a backpack. I started sleeping with the bedroom curtain open. I had not done that since I was a child. I told myself it was because the street light outside was reassuring. The truth was I wanted to be able to see the street from the bed if I woke up, and I wanted to be able to see if a tractor trailer was idling at the curb. None ever was. The fourth night home, I dreamed about the tree fort. I dreamed I was 9 and Janelle was 6, and we were both up in the fort, and Uncle Ray was at the bottom of the rope ladder asking us to throw the ladder down because the dogs were inside and it was safe to come down. In the dream, I knew the dogs were not inside. In the dream, I held the ladder up against the floorboards, and Janelle was small and trusting beside me, and Uncle Ray was patient at the bottom of the ladder, and he never raised his voice. He just stood there and asked us very politely to come down. I woke up at 4:14 a.m. with my hand cramped from holding something, and I lay in the dark for a long time before I figured out what the cramp was from. The dream did not come back. It only happened once. By the second week, I had stopped checking the 908 number. By the start of the third week, I had almost stopped expecting anything to happen. I worked the hardware store. I paid my landlord. I ate dinner at Janelle's place on a Wednesday, and her roommate's boyfriend made spaghetti, and we watched a movie, and it was the most ordinary Wednesday I have ever lived through. And when I went home, I sat in my car in front of my house for a while before I went inside, because I wanted to be sure the ordinariness was real. The third week was the bad week, not because anything happened, because nothing happened, and because the date on the bill of lading I had photographed in the trailer, 22 days from the night of the run, was getting close. I had not let myself look at the date directly. I had gone 20 days, 21 days, the way you avoid stepping on a sore tooth. On the morning of day 21, I made myself open the email. The photo was where I had left it. The date was the next day. I want to be clear. The bill of lading did not say I would do anything. It was a piece of paper with my name on it, dated, with a Linden origin and a Carlisle destination, and a weight of 41,200 pounds, and the same cargo description as every other paper in that stack. It did not say I would pick up. It did not say I would drive. It said only that this run was scheduled with my name on it, in my hand, 22 days after the night I had walked away. I drove to Linden that afternoon. I want to put down my reasoning honestly because it was not heroic, and I have spent some time wondering about it. I drove to Linden in the daytime on a Thursday at about 3 in the afternoon, because I needed to know if there was actually still a yard there, and if there was actually still a trailer there, and if there was actually still a man being moved from yard to yard once a month by a dispatcher named Vance, who did not officially exist. I did not have a plan. I did not bring my phone with me. I left it at home on the kitchen counter, plugged in. I drove my own car, my old Ford Focus, with a half tank of gas. I drove the speed limit. I took the exits I was supposed to take. I went over the Goethals Bridge in afternoon light and got off in Linden and turned onto Tremley Point Road and pulled up across the street from the gravel lot at 11:40. And I parked my Focus on the shoulder behind a parked box truck where I could see the gate, but the gate could not, I hoped, easily see me. The yard was the yard. Same chain link, same razor wire, same stenciled 1140 on the gate post. The gate was rolled open. There were trailers along the back fence, fewer than there had been 3 weeks ago, maybe a dozen now, but still anonymous white 48s. There was a red Freightliner Cascadia, parked in the middle of the lot, idling. DeLon Hauling, in faded gold script on the door. Same truck. The seat, I would have bet, was warm. There was a driver standing next to it. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, Hispanic, in a gray hoodie and jeans and steel-toed boots. He was holding a clipboard and a phone. He looked tired in the specific way a man looks tired when he is driven from somewhere far to get to a one-time job and has not eaten yet. He was on the phone. I could not hear what he was saying. A second man was walking across the lot toward him from the back row. The second man was carrying a clipboard. He had thinning hair combed flat. He had narrow shoulders. He was unremarkable in the way I had remembered. It was Vance. I sat in the Focus and watched. Vance got to the driver and shook his hand. They talked for maybe 2 minutes. Vance pointed at the back row. The driver nodded. Vance handed him the clipboard. The driver signed something on it. Vance handed him a phone. Not the driver's own phone, a separate small black phone, the kind you can buy prepaid at a 7-Eleven, and the driver pocketed it. Vance clapped him on the shoulder, friendly, the way a man does when he wants someone to feel welcomed. The driver climbed up into the Freightliner. He pulled it forward and around and lined up to a kingpin in the back row. He hooked up. He did the glad hands in the 7-way. He got out and walked the trailer the way I had walked it, and at the back of the trailer he stopped, and he stood there for a long second, and from where I was sitting I could see him cock his head a little at the back doors, the way a man cocks his head when he sees something he doesn't expect. He got back in the cab. He pulled around the lot and out the gate and turned right onto Tremley Point Road and went past me at 15 miles an hour, and I slumped low in the driver's seat and watched the trailer go by in my side mirror. The padlock was on the inside of the latch. The trailer turned at the light at the end of Tremley Point and disappeared toward a 95. I sat in the Focus for a long time. The cab of my car was very quiet. A train went by half a mile off, rumbling. A gull crossed the sky over the chain link toward the refinery. I looked at the dashboard clock. It said 3:47 p.m. I had been parked there for 40 minutes. I had not, in those 40 minutes, done a single thing to stop the man who had just driven away with that trailer behind him. I drove home. I want to put down something here that I have not said out loud to anyone, including Janelle, and which I am putting in this account because I told myself I would put it down honestly or not at all. When the trailer went past me on Tremley Point Road, I felt something I did not expect. I felt left out, just for a second, just a flicker, the way you feel when you see a group of people you used to know walking into a restaurant without you. He had picked me, and I had said no, and he had picked someone else, and the operation had moved on, and the part of me that knew it was an operation knew that being left out of it was the only good outcome. But the small animal part of me, the part that had felt the trailer rock at exit 5 and had understood it as a request, felt for 1/2 second, not me. I drove home. I did not stop on the way. I sat in my kitchen and I ate a sandwich and I did the dishes and I called Janelle and I asked her if she wanted to do dinner that weekend and she said yes. And I went to bed at 10 and slept until 6. And in the morning, I went to the hardware store and rang up paint thinner and replacement valve cores and a 4-pack of GFCY outlets for a contractor I knew slightly. And I came home and I made dinner and I ate it and I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my phone. The dash clock, the one at my kitchen table, the wall clock above the fridge, said 11:47 p.m. I had not noticed the time when I sat down. I want to be careful about this part because I know how it sounds. I sat at the table for maybe 2 minutes without doing anything. I was looking at the phone. The phone was face up next to a placemat. The screen was dark. I was not waiting for it to ring. I had not been thinking about the trailer, or about Vance, or about the date that had been on the bill of lading, which was the day before yesterday now and had passed without anything happening to me. I was thinking about what the contractor had said about his bathroom remodel and about whether I should call my mother on Sunday or Monday. The phone rang. It rang on the table, a clean, unmuffled ring, the default tone I had not bothered to change. The screen lit up. The number was the 908. I did not pick it up. I sat with my hands flat on the table and I watched it ring. It rang once, twice, 3 times. The voicemail on my phone was set to pick up after 4 rings. I had checked it earlier in the week, idly, the way you check things. 4 rings was the cutoff. After 4 rings, the voicemail greeting would play and the call would either disconnect or leave a message. It rang 4 times. It rang a 5th time. It rang a 6th. The voicemail did not pick up. The screen kept showing the incoming call. The 908 number stayed on the display. The ringtone played and played and played in even unbroken cycles. The way a phone rings when nothing on the other end is letting it stop. I did not pick it up. I did not move my hands off the table. I am writing this at the same kitchen table the next morning. The phone is across the table from me, plugged into its charger. Screen dark. The call log shows 1 missed call at 11:47 p.m. last night from the 908 number, duration 0 seconds, the way an unanswered call always looks in a log, regardless of how long it actually rang. I do not know how long it actually rang. I sat at the table and I watched it ring, and at some point, I want to say around midnight, but I am not sure, and I want to be honest that I am not sure. The screen went dark on its own, and the ringing stopped, and the kitchen was quiet, and the wall clock above the fridge showed a time I did not look at because I did not want to know. I made coffee this morning. I called Janelle to confirm dinner Saturday. She is fine. She sounded tired but fine. She asked if I was okay, the way she has been asking lately, and I said I was, and I think she believed me, and I think that's all right. The phone is on the table. It is not ringing now. I keep looking at it anyway. The padlock on the trailer that went past me on Tremley Point Road on Thursday afternoon was on the inside of the latch, and I want to put down for the record that the driver, the younger man, Hispanic, late 20s, gray hoodie, had cocked his head at the back doors when he walked the trailer, the way a man cocks his head when he sees something he doesn't expect. And then he had got back in the cab, and he had driven away with it anyway. I do not know his name. I do not know which exit he did not take. The phone is on the table. It is 11:47 in the morning now, 12 hours after the call. And a moment ago, while I was typing this sentence, the phone buzzed once, very short, the buzz of a single text arriving, and I have not picked it up to read it, and I am going to finish this paragraph before I do, and I am not going to